So let's dive into the final days of a man who literally changed the course of human thought. But, and get this, never wrote down a single word. Socrates. This is actually the first part of a bigger story we're going to tell, a three-part journey into the bedrock of Western philosophy. And we have to start with a master. See, everything we know about him comes to us from his most brilliant student, Plato. So what we're really looking at is a story so powerful, so important, it had to be preserved by someone else. And that question right there, that's the whole ballgame. That's the Socratic paradox. It's the principle that guided his entire life and, as we'll see, ultimately led to his death. It kind of flips everything you think you know about being smart on its head, and it's the absolute key to understanding the man we're about to meet. All right, so picture this. It's 399 BC. We're in Athens. A 70-year-old Socrates, a guy who's basically a local celebrity for wandering around the public square and asking people really annoying questions, is now on trial for his life. And thanks to Plato's account in a work called the Apologia, we get a front-row seat to his defense. Now, on paper, the charges were serious. They said he was corrupting the city's youth and that he didn't believe in the gods of Athens. But Socrates says, hold on. That's not what this is really about. He argued the real reason he was in trouble was because he was a philosophical gadfly, like a horsefly, constantly stinging the powerful and supposedly wise men of the city by showing everyone that they didn't really know what they were talking about. So you might be asking, why? Why was he doing this? Well, Socrates tells the court it all started with a trip his friend made to the most sacred place in ancient Greece, the oracle at Delphi. His friend asked the oracle if anyone in the world was wiser than Socrates. And the oracle's answer? A flat-out no. This just completely baffled Socrates, because if there was one thing he was sure of, it was that he knew absolutely nothing. So, to figure out this riddle, Socrates set off on what he called his divine mission. He came up with this famous method. He'd go find someone everyone thought was wise, a politician, a poet, a craftsman, and he'd just start asking them questions. And time after time, his questioning proved that these guys couldn't really defend their own beliefs. And you can probably guess what happened next, right? This process, the Socratic method, started making him some very powerful enemies. And this is where it all clicks into place for him. He finally understood what the oracle meant. His wisdom wasn't about having all the answers. No, his wisdom was in knowing exactly how much he didn't know. Unlike all these other guys who pretended to have knowledge they didn't really possess, Socrates was honest about his own ignorance, and for him, that was true wisdom. Okay, so let's get back to the trial. Because Socrates' defense wasn't just about saving his own skin. Not even close. He was basically putting the entire philosophical way of life on trial, arguing for its incredible value to Athens and, really, to every single one of us. And this is where we see his incredible conviction. The court actually offers him a deal. They say, look, we'll let you go, but you have to stop all this philosophical questioning. And his response is just absolute. He tells them, no way. He says his mission comes from God and he would rather die than give it up. He's that gadfly, sent to wake the city up from its lazy thinking. Well, despite this powerful defense, or let's be honest, probably because of it, the jury of his fellow Athenians finds him guilty. The sentence is death. He's to drink a poison made from a plant called hemlock. But believe me, the story is far from over. So now the scene shifts. We're out of the courtroom and into a prison cell. Some weeks have gone by because of a religious holiday, and one morning before sunrise, Socrates' rich friend Crito shows up. He's got a plan. The guards are bribed, a boat is ready, the escape is all set. All Socrates has to do is get up and walk out. And Crito's offer puts Socrates face to face with this massive moral dilemma, one that Plato explores in a dialogue called Crito. Okay, sure, he's been condemned unjustly, but does that give him the right to break the law and escape? Crito's argument is all heart, right? It's emotional and practical. He says, think about your friends, your reputation. What about your sons? You'll be abandoning them. But Socrates, he brings it all back to one core, unshakable philosophical principle. You should never do wrong, even if someone has done wrong to you. For him, escaping would be like injuring the state in return, and that's an evil he just refuses to commit. And to really hammer this point home, Socrates does something amazing. He imagines the laws of Athens themselves coming to life, standing right there in his cell and cross-examining him. The laws ask him, Socrates, by escaping, aren't you trying to destroy us, to destroy the whole city? And right here, through the voice of the laws, Socrates lays out one of the earliest arguments for what we now call a social contract. The laws remind him, look, we protected you when you were born, we educated you, and you freely chose to live here in Athens for 70 years, which means you implicitly agreed to our rules. To run away now would be to break that promise and harm the very city that raised you. So Socrates chooses to stay. And now we come to his final day, as told in Plato's dialogue, the Phædo. His friends all gather in his cell, probably expecting to find him completely broken. But instead, they find him totally calm, even cheerful, and ready for one last philosophical chat about the immortality of the soul. In this last conversation, Socrates gives them this just mind-blowing definition of philosophy. He argues that a true philosopher spends their entire life trying to free the soul from all the distractions of the body. And since death is just the final separation of the soul from the body, well, that means philosophy is really just practice for dying. He's like, I've been training for this my whole life. Why would I be scared of the main event? And he brings it all back home to his core principle. He says, look, no living person really knows what happens after we die. So to fear it, that's just another form of ignorance. It's pretending to know something that you absolutely don't. For a man who fought against ignorance his whole life, fearing death would be the ultimate hypocrisy. And so, as the sun starts to set, the final moments are here. Plato gives us this incredibly detailed and moving account of a death that was met with just unparalleled bravery and peace. You know, one of the most powerful details is about the prison officer, the man in charge of the execution. He's seen countless men face their end, but he's so moved by Socrates' character that he's the one who starts weeping as he says goodbye. He calls Socrates the noblest and best man he's ever met in that place. When his friends can't hold it together anymore and just break down sobbing, Socrates gently scolds them. He says he sent the women away to avoid exactly this kind of scene. He wants to die peacefully, with dignity. He tells them to be quiet and be brave. So when the cup of hemlock is finally brought to him, he takes it without any hesitation at all. He says a quick prayer that his journey to the next world will be a good one, and then he just drinks it down, readily and calmly. He is the master of his own soul, right to the very, very end. As he feels the poison spreading, he speaks his very last words, and they're weird. He tells his friend Crito, "We owe a rooster to Asclepius. Please, pay it and don't forget." Asclepius was the god of healing. Scholars have debated what he meant for over 2,000 years. Was he saying death is a cure for the sickness of life? It's a final riddle from a man who lived his whole life by asking questions. And that leaves us here with his most famous declaration, the one he made at his trial. It sums up everything he stood for. He chose death over a life where he couldn't ask questions, where he couldn't seek wisdom. He believed the entire point of being human is to examine our lives, our beliefs, our values. And so the question he leaves for us, the one he literally died for, is this: is a life without that constant examination even worth living at all?